You are now live.
We are now live, and somebody has to get rid of the gutted side in the middle.
Oh, that's me. Sorry.
And this is Senate Finance. It took a little longer. We are on the air, yes, and it's 6:30 last night. When I left, Senator, we were still on air. You failed in your duty to shut the sign.
Oh, that part. Okay. I was like, wait, no, I think that's
At 6:30, it wasn't.
You did your job, Senator, you did. Today, we had a long discussion yesterday on the energy savings account, the pilot program. And thought we just have Ellen walk us through this step by, or section by section, and we can decide what we want to do, if anything, in any section. So Ellen, you want to walk us through this one?
Sure. Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. Posted on your website today is draft 2.1 of the amendment to S-269. This bill amends a session law program called the Energy Savings Account Partnership Pilot Program. So there is only one small change from the prior draft that I walked you through a few days ago. But did you just say you want me to go through all of the language?
Well, I think we need to either agree or disagree. We need to decide what we're going to do with this one, because it's either coming out or it's not. We are down to the wire on this. So why don't you just walk us through it? It's not that long, and we can decide what we want to do at each step.
Sure. So there's a small change on page 1 that was that hasn't changed.
It's not a change. Let's just walk through what it does.
Sure. So this language on page 1 established the partnership pilot program, and it said that on or before July 1, 2019, the PUC shall, by rule or order, establish a 3-year pilot program for customers to self-direct the use of their energy efficiency funds, working with Efficiency Vermont. So this strikes the language, making it a 3-year pilot program. So it just says a pilot program. And you have had extensive discussions about the exact number of years. So I just left it as a pilot program with no number of years.
Okay.
However, there's additional information later. So it's not that it's completely open-ended, but. So page 2 is all existing language that pertains to the partnership pilot program.
Okay, well, some of this weren't here when we did this 3 years ago, so let's just walk through it as a refresher.
Okay. So all right, but do you want me to start at the beginning and go through line by line?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
I'll a 10,000 foot view, but just let us know what this was originally set up to do, because I think that's part of what we were missing yesterday.
So I'm on page 1, line 14.
Mm-hmm.
The total amount of the energy efficiency funds available in the pilot program each year shall not exceed $2 million. That figure was used sort of in the aggregate among the number of participants.
Okay.
The pilot program established under this section shall be an expansion of the existing energy savings account option, under which the customer shall continue to pay its energy efficiency charge and be able to receive an amount equal to 100% of its energy savings account balance to pay for the full cost of projects that are eligible under subdivision 3 of this section. So The customer pays their energy efficiency charge, but it goes into a specific savings account. And then under this program, they are eligible to use up to 100% of the funds in that account for eligible projects. Onto page 2. For technical assistance and other services from Efficiency Vermont for evaluation, measurement, and verification activities conducted by the department or Efficiency Vermont. So, that's still listing what they can use their funds on. So they can use them for the projects, but then also verification and evaluation by Efficiency Vermont or the Department of Public Service. The customer may receive payments in advance.
One question.
Oh, sorry.
Ellen.
I'm sorry, Ellen, this is a really minor question, and I, just to double check on this. There are a bunch of abbreviations, EEC, ESA, EVT. Are those defined somewhere in a place we don't see?
Yes.
Okay. I figured that was the case, but I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yes, and if that would be helpful, I can get them to you. So this language is coming out of Act 150 of 2018. It's section 2 of that bill. So I can get you the full text of that if you'd like, but it's not in statute, it's session law.
It's session law. Okay. Okay. And okay.
And
No, it's
EVT is
fine.
Efficiency Vermont, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And
And the department,
EEC is energy efficiency charge.
that's the money.
Yep.
And the department means the Department of Public Service in this context.
Yes.
I think that's it so far. Okay. But we'll watch for more. Okay.
Yes. So the customer may receive payments in advance of project completion from Efficiency Vermont based on the energy management plan submitted under subsection E of this section, estimated project costs and projected energy savings. However, a customer shall not receive advance payments from Efficiency Vermont that exceed the amount of customer energy efficiency charge funds the customer has already paid.
Okay.
So notwithstanding any contrary provision in 30 VSA 209, the energy efficiency charge funds may be used for one or more of the following: electric energy efficiency, thermal energy and process fuel efficiency for unregulated fuels, energy productivity measures, demand management, and energy storage that provides benefits to the customer and its interconnecting utility. In addition, for a customer who is a manufacturer and whose purchases of regulated fuel exceeds 600,000 cubic feet in 2017, the funds may be used for thermal energy and process fuel efficiency for regulated fuels. And any regulated fuel savings attributable to investment of customer energy efficiency charge funds through the pilot program shall be counted towards Efficiency Vermont's performance indicators. Efficiency Vermont may allocate the cost of the pilot across regulated and unregulated fuel funding sources in a manner that avoids or reduces the need to adjust savings goals approved by the PUC. So this paragraph does include the list of eligible projects or types of projects, and there's some specific language which is unlike other energy efficiency programs the state has. So on page 3, here's the new language that's being proposed to be added by this bill. So the pilot created pursuant to this section shall be extended an additional 18 months until December 31st, 2023. The PUC shall allow the current participants in the pilot to decline to participate in this extension by submitting written notice to the PUC on or before June 30th, 2022. The extension shall allow pilot participants to spend or contract to spend pilot funds accrued prior to January 1, 2024, but shall not allow participants to accrue additional pilot funds. The commission shall consider requests and shall approve all reasonable extension requests. And so this language that's in yellow, that was the language that was proposed yesterday, I think it was yesterday, by the stakeholder group working on this.
Okay. And that seems, this is the new language, so it extends it to 2023, which is the 18 months, and it shall allow pilot participants to spend. All right, this is what they gave us yesterday, to spend or contract to spend pilot funds accrued prior to January 24. Yeah. So what this says, and I don't think Senator McDonald, it's what you thought it said. It said that after the 18 months, this says you can accrue for that additional 18 months. And then as long as the money is committed, it's under contract, you have another 3 years to actually write the check, is what I understood them to say. Contract to spend pilot funds accrued prior, yeah. Okay, so this does allow them to accrue up until, for another 2 years, right? Till January 1st, 2024.
Yes,
Okay,
18 months?
and
18 months, yeah.
it's 18 months, so they can accrue for another 18 months. The commission shall consider requests of all reasonable extensions. Okay, so this. Yeah, and then the next line is the up to 26. And it was the highlighted, the extra accruing until for 18 months. That was the cause of some consternation yesterday by some people. One side of the table, to be exact. We have pros and cons, but that's the big, well, the decision point is, are we gonna do this at all, or just say, forget it? And I haven't picked up that sympathy from the committee that we
Wholeheartedly endorse restoring to the program the ability to do this in 3 years, the 3 years with them. So I think that problem there. You correctly characterized, probably do that,
which is
the extra,
the 18.
the extra money, but nothing, the bill should permit them to conduct and participate in what we told them they could do a couple of years ago, which was delayed by COVID, and it shouldn't be shortchanged because of that. I would not
Okay,
give them an additional pile of money beyond what we offered them originally. So
Senator Bray, I've got one for no 18 months collection. Senator Bray.
Well, so it's maybe premature, but I think I've learned enough to be comfortable moving that we adopt draft 2.1 of S269.
Okay, so you would give them the extra 18 months to accrue money?
It's in the draft.
That's in the draft.
Did we go through the whole draft?
We have gotten as far as the change that was requested yesterday, which clarifies,
Which is on page 3, top of page 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's in the yellow, that clarifies that they can accrue and then they can get up to 3 years to spend it on the approved project, but they can't continue to accrue for that 3 years. Okay. Anybody else want to limit that accrual time to the original? Or Senator Pearson, are you with us?
Always, Madam Chair.
Okay. So the question, Senator Pearson, is, do you
Yes, I
want?
heard.
Okay,
I'm comfortable with the amendment, and I know Senator McDonald is puzzled by my position, but I would just say, I think you get, from where I sit, we will have a cleaner experiment this way. We just, otherwise it may or may not work, and the people involved will come back and say, oh, we were all interrupted and blah, blah, blah. So I'm supportive of this language because I think it allows us to carry out the original bill, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't.
okay. We'll find that out. All right, Senator Hardy,
I'm comfortable with it.
all right. Okay, let's move, Ellen.
You didn't ask me whether I supported it, so you're coming
Okay,
forward.
I supported
We were
Senator
afraid
Fry.
to.
I thought you made your point clear yesterday.
You would give them even more time, right?
Okay, I'm on a roll here, so let's keep going, Ellen. We might get a bill out today. Because we keep getting them dropped on us, so.
Sure, so the next, so subdivision 5 just says, the participants selected for the pilot may request an additional extension until December 31st, 2026. The commission shall consider requests and shall approve all reasonable extension requests.
Okay.
Next, underlying language from the session law, energy management plans. Working with Efficiency Vermont, each customer selected for the pilot shall develop an energy management plan for the period of the pilot with projects to be implemented, energy savings targets, and a timeline for projects and investment. A copy of each plan shall be submitted to the commission, the department, and ACCD. And so as you will see on lines 12 and 18, there are other components to this pilot that were in the session law. I didn't include every single one here because I think it was a 4-ish page session law provision. So there are other pilot components that you have heard about, but this is just making sure that it includes the reference that the energy management plan shall cover the period of the pilot. Annual reports on or before each November 1, 2020 through 2025, Efficiency Vermont and the selected customers jointly shall submit written progress reports to the PUC, the department, and the standing committees of jurisdiction. That is a defined term in this bill. You are included as one of the standing committees of jurisdiction. That include projects under the pilot and their associated energy and energy and cost savings.
Okay.
Each customer's project under the pilot and the associated data and results shall be made public through this report. However, a customer may request that the commission order customer-specific data used in preparing a report to be kept confidential if it would qualify for an exemption from disclosure. If the commission issues such an order, data subject to the order shall be disclosed only in accordance with protective agreement provided by the commission and signed by the recipient of the data unless directed otherwise.
Okay, everyone, any questions on that section? Senator Sirotkin,
I'm sorry.
page 3 seems to be the one controversial section which would allow businesses, the original businesses, to continue to accrue funds for 18 months and then have up to an additional 3 years to spend them on the one approved plan. Right now, the committee has voted in favor of that. Is that to your liking? No, not everybody.
No, it's gonna be an amendment. I'm gonna offer an amendment to strike the portion that deals with the extra 18 months of monies. Or I'll be defeated, and then what's here will be here.
I guess,
I guess one of the questions that jumped out at me is I felt like this was sort of in the jurisdiction of natural resources. I was interested in the chair of this of natural resources.
Yeah, I've already moved the, yeah, and so I'm satisfied.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I do have a question.
yes,
But thank
I have
you.
a question for Ellen, and I don't know if you know this, Ellen, but and let me just take a moment and say I'm sorry. I was, when we were talking about the Rygate bill yesterday, I was short with you, and I apologize for that.
Apology
On this-
accepted.
On this bill, yesterday I think it was you or one of the witnesses said that there were, I can't remember the number, but some companies that are participating had still not filed their plan. And that just struck me because this whole thing was about to wrap up in July. And can you help me understand, should we be worried about that, or is it understood that they have until July to file that? Or do you have any insight about that timeline and how it relates? Because here we are potentially offering them an extension, and I want to be sure they're kind of conforming to the original pilot.
So I don't know the answer. I'm not sure why that happened, honestly, and I don't have all the details. This amendment is going to require the PUC to update the order on the pilot. So I'm not sure if they're going to include any additional dates in there specifically about additional deadlines related to this extension. That could be something you could consider. I'm not entirely sure why so many have had such a delay with the management plans, but I haven't been involved in those conversations really, so.
Yeah, okay.
it does allow for the PUC, I think, to allow companies to withdraw. So I think they're anticipating that some of them signed up, and then when they started to do the work, it did work. So, but
Okay.
I don't know if we know.
It's the agenda. They had it printed for you.
Oh, thank you, Faith. All right. Okay. So Ellen, are we ready to? Any other questions at this point? We're moving.
Okay, so evaluation. On completion of the pilot, the commission shall conduct or have a third party conduct an independent evaluation of the partnership pilot. There's additional language in the session law that's omitted here. But after considering the results of the evaluation, the PUC shall submit a written recommendation to the standing committees of jurisdiction on whether to continue the program conducted under this section, and if so, what recommended conditions and revisions, if any. The commission shall submit this recommendation to the General Assembly on or before January 15th, 2023. So that date is not being changed here. So the PUC will still be reporting back 1 year, 10 months from now.
Okay. And instead of a final report, that will be like a progress report?
Well, it still is phrased as a final report. There'll still be projects under construction, but
Well, I suppose we can always tell them, depending on what that's in that report, we can tell them we want them to do a second final report if it doesn't have the information we hoped it had. Or they'll ask for a delay in the report. I suppose it will give us interim information rather than wait another 3 years. I don't know what to do with that. Committee, any thoughts? Senator Brock, you.
Well, is that, I'm not really sure exactly what you're looking for, Madam Chair. Are you looking for some additional reporting in terms of progress?
No, I think this is the original date. And I can remember when we first looked at this year, somebody said, well, why don't we know what the results were? And they said, well, the report's not due until we don't have any results to report. So they're keeping that original date. The question is, that would be a progress report,
It would be, yeah.
but I don't.
It would not be the completed
It
report,
would be
obviously.
a completed
Yeah.
report and analysis.
Well, I guess one question would be, should there be just a change here to reflect that the final report demonstrating the results of the pilot project and any progress or lack thereof should be submitted by whatever the date certain that we want to put in? Would that make sense?
I would think, by the time, if they've got 3 years to complete, it would seem like 2025, they should have enough data to do something.
Yeah, I just want to point out, I think what you're talking about is actually in here already, but Alan, please, obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but on the bottom of page 3, there's the annual reports, and it says on or before each November 1st
Yeah.
from 2020. First it was through 2022, now it's extended through 2025. That Efficiency Vermont and selected customers shall jointly submit a written progress report to the commission, the department, and the standing committees of jurisdiction. So it seems like that's what you were just talking about.
It would seem as though, and I guess the
Yeah.
one question would be, is it conceivable that you're going to have a report after 2025?
Yeah, that's progress, and what
Yeah.
they changed that from 22 to 25
Yeah.
to reflect the extension. What they missed is at the bottom of page 4, which is the commission shall submit this after considering the results of the evaluation, they shall submit a written recommendation to the standing committees. So that's the recommendation that says, this wasn't worth it, or, yeah, we really got some
Right.
energy
says
savings here, and we oughta.
Right, and it says here before January 15, 2023, and it's that date that ought to be moved forward.
That's the one
Yes,
that should
okay,
be
yeah,
moved
yeah,
forward.
that's right. There's a lot of dates in here.
Yeah.
And a lot of referrals. So that
So
would be 2025 or 2026?
I would like to give them some, they're not gonna finish up until 25. I'd like to give them some time
Yeah.
to do the evaluation, so 26. Does that work?
Because Ellen, this is the final report about whether or not this thing worked, right? Yeah.
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 We will have already asked for and introduced the bill to continue it before it expires. That's,
You are
put your
such a
money on that.
cynic, Mark.
But before doing that, I would think that they're gonna have to tell us why.
Yeah,
And again, we still want, I think, a final completed report.
and I would not assume that Efficiency Vermont and Public Utility Commission is going to necessarily just rubber stamp anything.
So related to this topic, and I don't want to derail this, but the last page does have the stakeholder group providing you with their recommendations also. So there's a separate report with their recommendations also on January 1, 2023. And so that's just another element here that we haven't fully discussed in a while, but yes, this section here is the final report from the PUC after evaluation.
Yeah.
We've got 2 of them that are set in 23, but there's a good chance that we're narrowing down to a set number of much smaller number than we started out with of participants.
The one concern, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, the one concern that I have about what's on page 4 is this refers to, in effect, a recommendation as to whether the program should be continued, but it doesn't go to the issue of what are the results of the individual projects in the program, which is something that I think we want to know. What worked and what didn't work.
That is on J,
Yeah,
that's
and
J,
Yeah,
on page 4.
Okay,
Sorry.
so why can't we just say, make it 26, say they shall. Why do we have to have section 2 at all?
I agree, the working group thing, that seems excessive,
Or we could just strike that first section and say the working group, which is the folks that have been talking to us on it before, and do August 1st, 2026, so they get 6 months after this ends.
but don't we wanna have an outside evaluation? That we don't want the people who are in the program to be evaluating whether or not
No, but
they
it's,
were successful in the program.
I guess it's who's in the program. The businesses are in the program.
Because the evaluation says have a third party conduct an independent evaluation.
That costs money.
Well, I think that that's important because we don't want to have, it's like, grading your own test, basically. And so.
and you want an independent third party who doesn't have a horse in the race.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think that's good protection.
But I agree with you, Madam Chair, that I don't think section 2 is even necessary because that's so early. That's like in 6 months that we would, they would
Yeah.
start doing
I
this.
agree.
Yeah, they won't even, so we're on, we'll take out number
So,
3.
Did you want to hear a hypothetical counter argument to that? If you had
Yes,
witnesses in the
good.
room? If there were witnesses in the room, I think what they would tell you is that there's an existing ESA program and that there's currently only one participant in it.
Yeah,
And that it is an old program that was difficult for people to actually participate in. That's what led to this pilot program in which there's now a group of stakeholders. The stakeholders, I think, would tell you they have a perspective on what types of elements don't work in the existing statutory program. And that may differ from what comes from a PUC's independent evaluation.
okay, so let's make that clear, that they will give us an evaluation of the program. And I still think we need to bump that out at least a year. And then, in section 2, make that a third-party evaluation of the outcomes.
Well, that's already in section 1, the third party evaluation. It's J on page 4. And that,
Okay, so that's the PUC.
Yeah,
They should be an outside party.
on line 20 of page 4 though, that says January 15th, 2023. That's the independent evaluation, right? Ellen, that we wanted to bump out.
Yes, and so, yes, there's an independent evaluation by a third party or the PUC, and then after the evaluation, the PUC is going to report back with recommendations, and that is currently January 2023.
Okay,
That's the
so
one we would
we
want
want
to
to
do.
bump that out, I think, to 25 or 26? 25? 26.
26, I'd say.
You think 26?
I'm inclined to think that, after the program is or the pilot is over, there's going to be a period of time in which you're going to have to go back and look at data statistics, do analysis, and so on. And I think there ought to be at least enough time, 6 months after everything is done as a minimum, before you are required to do that. And just given how long it takes people to do reports around here.
When is the last date of the,
Of activity.
oh, it's December 31st, 2026.
Yeah,
So if we have them report by January 15th, that gives
Yeah,
them
I
2
mean, that's a little
weeks.
quick.
but some of these projects will finish up before that.
Some
Yeah,
will.
So they can do
Say
Such
the
a
individual
far
reports,
time.
you could say within 6 months of the last
How about a no later than, so that
Yeah.
some could file it earlier?
Okay,
That's good.
July 1st, 2027.
No, that's too far out.
Well, that's.
July.
Well, you're
now
getting
we-
interim reports though. You're getting interim reports
Yeah.
throughout.
And it's 26 is when you're gonna finish up the last one. So
I
to
don't think
give
it's
them
unreasonable to
6
say 6 months
months.
after that would take you to July of 2027. But you still have these interim annual reports.
Okay,
Okay. No later than July 1st, 2027, is that what you said?
yeah,
But then this pilot working group,
Yes, do you want to talk about section 2?
yeah, section 2,
Do you want me to read through it?
yes.
So on or before August 1, 2022, this year, DPS shall convene a working group to include the participants of the existing Energy Savings Account program and the participants in the pilot program, as well as Efficiency Vermont and ACCD. And then on or before January 15th, 2023, the working group shall report back with their recommended changes to the statutory program.
To the program itself.
Yes. I think there is interest in amending the statutory program in hopes that more people would join it. And that was part of the rationale, I think, for the creation of the pilot originally.
They
as
want
well.
to do the work, I suppose.
and they want to do it by 2023? Will they have enough information?
All right, so this was specifically requested by the stakeholder group that you heard from. If you want to include this, you can. I'm sure if you didn't include this, they may provide you recommendations.
Anyway.
But this is mandated.
Saying is, look, they've already gotten a certain amount of feedback, like we joined this but for. And because they aren't getting the turnout they thought they would get. This is a pilot. So all they're asking to do is report back to us what they've learned so far. And then if they think changes need to be made in the program, they'll ask us to make them at that time. I think they can do that without us authorizing them to do that, but I don't see that does any harm.
Yeah, I think either way is fine.
Yeah. So what we've decided to change in this is that date from 20, at the bottom of page 4, from 2023 to 2026.
27.
27, that's right, that is the up to, no later than
No later than July 1st, 2027.
27.
Boy. It's a long time.
Yep. Okay,
We'll all be here to read the report when it comes in.
Oh, sure we will.
we'll all remember the discussion. All right, Ellen, can you get us, how long will it take to get a clean copy, or do we need a clean copy?
I'm doing it right now.
Will be 2.2,
It'll be 3.1.
3.1, okay.
All right.
We
And
throw-
the only change is that one date.
Your efforts to move us along quicker. I'm sorry.
We've been
How
improved.
far behind are we?
I'm changing that date for 5 years down the road.
We're almost on time.
Great.
What did that say?
Yes, Senator Bray has withdrawn.
I would offer a substitute motion.
I
and that
think
is-
we're ready for a new motion, which is 3.1, which changes the date.
Yes, I am.
Okay, would you like to move 3.1.
Yes, so I would move that the committee, amend the bill with version 3.1 on S2 of the bill S-269.
Do we have to vote? I was told this morning we could just vote the bill as amended by the committee. My clerk makes us vote to amend it.
What I've always
Well, I
experienced.
think you effectively taking the vote on the amendment.
And the amendment is the whole bill with the,
No, I mean, we need an opinion from people whether they want to amend it, so whether it's informal or not.
Well,
Once amended,
All right.
then you need to decide if you want to move it yet.
Right.
all right, so we are voting right now to amend 2.1 by changing the date. Of line 20, the bottom of page 4, section part 3, from January 15th, 2023 to no later than July 1st, 2027.
And that will be in the draft.
And yes, and then we were voting to, and then we can approve draft 3.1, which includes that amendment, I believe. So would somebody like to propose, Senator Bray, did you propose that amendment?
I think I did.
Senator Bray moves that we change the date. Further discussion, if not, all
Madam
those,
Chair,
yes.
I would move the permission to strike the portion of the draft authorizing the participants an additional 18 months.
Okay, let me finish with this amendment and then I'll do yours, right? I got two amendments.
I'm not, I don't want to go first because I want to go first. I don't want to, I don't, some pass and be told that we're reconsidering.
No, we're just amending the bill. And then if you have another amendment, we will take your amendment.
If you're fine with that,
Okay,
I'm satisfied.
all right, so we have the amendment to change the date from Senator Bray. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Aye, okay, I'm hearing that as 7. Now, Senator McDonald, you have another amendment.
I move to further amend the bill by striking the portion of draft 3.1 that authorizes participants an additional 18 months worth of funding from the draft that we've just approved.
Okay, so you were moving to strike on page 3, number 4, the sentence that says the extension shall allow pilot participants to spend or contract to spend pilot funds accrued. No, where is it?
Madam Chair, I will write that down.
Yeah, but
Word
I'm
for
trying to
word
see what
if
we're.
the amendment passes.
I'm trying to see what you want to strike.
Where is that?
Well, top of page 3, the first line is extending an additional 18 months.
But it's
So, I don't know if
specifically,
you want-
Line 6 and 7.
Okay, well, we've got what Senator McDonald would like to do, and if we vote to approve that, then
We'll wrestle.
we'll let staff figure out what lines we need to strike. Okay, so we have the motion from Senator McDonald to strike the section that would allow an additional 18 months of accrued funds. Is there further discussion? Senator Bray.
I would just say that although I have my concerns about what we're doing, it is a pilot. And if we don't extend it, then we removed a significant portion of the funding for that pilot. And I think the pilot as a quote unquote experiment will be less useful to everybody, including the legislature, in terms of evaluating the impacts. There is context outside of this, and that is that we are increasingly starting to say that we're not only looking for to save kilowatt hours, but to reduce emissions. And that we're redefining efficiency away from just pure kilowatt hour savings to doing things that have a direct impact on greenhouse gases. So the pilot could be useful, and the screen for the pilot to test for whether something's eligible might actually inform other revisions to existing programs beyond just the ESA. So that would be my rationale.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the program that was lasted 3 years, with 3 years worth of money. We have changed that because of COVID to restore it to be a 3-year program with 50% more money than it had. And that is beyond what the original bill called for. So that's what we're doing.
Further discussion.
I have a
Senators?
question.
Okay.
If that's what we're doing, why do we have to do that? Well, is it a necessity that you have to raise the amount of money by 50,000 from the original plan?
So my understanding is that so you're talking about how much they collect as opposed to how much they invest in projects?
I just responding to Senator Don, I said the difference is with this amendment is we're giving them an extension, but we're also giving them more money to work with. I assume it could be written so they get the extension at the same amount.
There is a cap in here that remains.
There's a difference though. And may I answer that?
Yep.
The answer is because of the A, COVID, but B, because of the delays in PFC and so on in terms of program, some of the recipients moved with other smaller projects rather than transformational projects that they originally designed, because there was this period of time in which there was a lack of clarity as to whether anything was going to happen. And so some of them started to do projects that they knew they could do in the limited time frame that they had, rather than the transformational projects that were originally designed and planned for. And what this does is it's designed to get us back on the same track, starting track, to allow them to do what the program was designed to do in the first place, and that is do a pilot to see if these larger transformational projects could in fact work. To do that, it's got to be funded.
And the original $2 million cap is still in the bill.
Correct.
So even with the 18 months, there is a cap. They can't put more than that aside.
The group of experimenters
Yes,
or each individual experimenter.
the group. The bill says,
Page 1, line 15.
yeah. Funds available to the pilot program each year shall not exceed $2 million.
So it's 6 million. The cap is effectively limited to $6 million.
It's a 3-year cap.
And then it's a 4.5 year.
Year cap. I don't know.
It's a 4.5 year when it comes to money, so.
We need to find that out, I think. Is that crucial to anyone's vote?
Have Ellen and Graham on the screen, do either of them?
Is, no, I think Abby and Graham are here for the next item, which we're 5 minutes overdue for.
Yes, and I'm going to have to leave, but were you just asking about the $2 million?
Yeah, they want to know if that's gone up from 6 and if it's picking up. I guess it would pick up an additional 2.5, 3, if we're extending 18 months.
Except that they didn't, I believe that they did not actually hit $2 million because of the applicants that they chose. So they didn't hit it's not 2 million, it's somewhere south of that.
Okay.
But yes, it's whatever that number, 1.5 million, whatever, somewhere in there, maybe.
We've already gone through the first 2.5 years and they have not hit the 2 million at all.
They don't need an extension.
so that it's,
They've been doing it for 200
No.
years.
okay. This has another stop too. All right, we have a motion on the table, which is Senator McDonald's. Are we ready to vote on that? Okay. All those in favor of Senator McDonald's motion to strike the extra 18 months of funding, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no.
No,
No.
Motion fails.
160.
160, okay. Now, we have changed the date, right? So we now have a bill,
What passed in the last one, 700.
zero, was the change of the date at the bottom. Senator Gray.
So I would move that the committee report favorably, S 269 as amended by draft 3.1.
Okay, it's moved that the city report favorably S 269 draft 3.1. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Up this discussion, Senator Sorkin? Oh, okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed say no.
No,
Okay, that is 610.
and
So
it is so recorded.
I'm looking for a reporter. Would someone like to report that?
Senator Brock, you've spoken a lot on it. I'd be happy to report it, but you have been much nearer or dearer to your heart
I've
than
spoken a lot. I
to mine.
rarely volunteer to report bills. Last time I volunteered, I wound up going to Vietnam, so.
It'll solve the mystery of who the
I-
vote is.
I don't think it'll be that bad.
I've heard you report a bill before.
Well, once in a while. Yeah, I'll report it.
I have to go. Thank you.
Bye-bye,
Thank you.
And we are only 10 minutes late,
It's
but
your bill,
that's
isn't
not too bad.
It's your bill, isn't it?
That's not nice.
Yeah, you should do it right
Yeah.
now. I think I did the
I don't wanna-
original, but I think this one.
But I didn't want to.
Okay.
Process that.
So we are on to
Thank you, Madam Chair.
437, thank you. 437. And this is the act relating, this is, who have I got? Abby, are you with us? I see your name. Will Baker is around. Okay. Abby, can you just, this bill we did, I actually thought we had voted it out, but somewhere in that mix in the last week on Zoom, it was on the board. And nobody noticed it until, yes, what?
I'm looking for the number.
437, H, 437. Okay, so. Just this, I know at least 3 separate parts on this one. And I know, is it you, Will, are you gonna walk us through? I'm not, on the agenda, I've got Will Baker from the Department of Taxes. Did you wanna go first, Will?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Will Baker, Legal Director of the Tax Department. I am here really just to discuss the sales tax exemption portion of this bill.
Okay,
I'm not here for the Tax Department for any of the other sections.
okay, so why don't, I've got bills here, which I'm gonna try and pass out. There they are. Abby, why don't you just walk us through the bill? Let's see, okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Madam Chair.
I'm passing them out, 1, 2, 3. Or can you pass those down? 1, 2, 3.
Good, please. How many copies?
And then 1, 2, 3. These are the financial,
I don't need copies.
okay. I do, because I've got two here. Do you have that one? Is that posted? And this is the financial statement. Mark, can you pass that one? Okay. Faith, I will clean this mess up before I go home. Okay. So Abby, if you can just walk us through the bill, and then I think we'll take testimony, because they are very distinct sections. On each section as we go through it. Because I know Peter Tucker is here for one section, Will's here for another section. I don't know that anybody is here for the mobile homes. Mobile homes, okay. We have somebody in the room for mobile homes, so we will take that testimony as we go. All right,
Madam Chair,
yes.
this looks very familiar. Didn't we?
Yes,
Did we
it
debate
is.
this over and over
We
again?
did, and it never came out.
Did we make a decision not to?
I don't know what we did.
We did
It was this time of year in June, a year ago.
We could not reach agreement on the package.
It was very, yeah, everybody liked one section and everybody hated one section, and they weren't the same section. And the House has asked us to try again. So I'm on a roll. I'm gonna try. So Abby, let's start off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Abby Shepherd, Office of Legislative Counsel. I'll start with the first two sections, which are related to the property transfer tax. So this imposes a surcharge of 0.5% on transfers of property by deeded title when the value of the transfer is over $1 million. So what that means is it would apply to transfers of real property when the transfer is over $1 million. One thing to note is that does not apply the way it's currently drafted to controlling interests. That also applies to all properties, so it is not exclusive to residential homes, for example. So it would apply to commercial as well. It requires the Commissioner of Taxes to estimate the revenue raised and to deposit it, all of the surcharge revenue into the general fund. The second section is making conforming changes to the general fund section of statute, saying that all surcharge revenue goes into the general fund. And that's important to note because the property transfer tax itself is split up in different ways in statute, and all of that is not withstood by this language. So it would all go into the general fund. And that again is just the surcharge portion. That's also what is happening in section 3 because there is language under current statute. And then the budget typically does it a slightly different way each year, allocating revenues from the property transfer tax to the Vermont Housing and Conservation Trust Fund and Municipal and Regional Planning Fund. So this bill just says all surcharge revenue go to the general fund. So those three sections are uniquely for the property transfer tax surcharge. So I'll stop there if there are any questions. Otherwise, I'll move on to the other two major pieces in the bill.
Okay, no, I know that Peter Tucker is here. And I know the realtors had testified. When we first looked at this, he contacted me and said, could they testify again? So Peter, the floor is yours.
Which section is it?
The section 1, this is the tax on the property over $1 million.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Peter Tucker for the Vermont Association of Realtors. And we appreciate your understanding how important property taxes are to, to our industry, but also to our clients. They're the folks that are paying the taxes. Our view of this surcharge is really, it's a matter of commerce. Is our goal to encourage investment in the state or to discourage investment in the state? The surcharge itself, and I looked at the new fiscal note, doesn't raise a tremendous amount of revenue. It just seems to be a way to to really try and attach, more of a tax basis to folks that have some ability to pay. The way this breaks down is really, look at the different groups of properties that may be purchased for over $1 million. On the commercial side, somebody investing $1 million in a commercial property is probably creating jobs, definitely creating commerce, and expanding the tax base overall through their commercial efforts. A second homeowner actually falls into kind of a similar state in that it is a second home. They're not out mowing lawn. Their need for contracted services for the property that they own in Vermont is significant. And, their use of the property when they're here, they're like super tourists, right? I mean, not only do they like to come and visit the state, but they made that investment in the state, and they're paying significant property taxes as well. And then the third and the smallest group that we kind of looked at are folks purchasing $1 million or above residential property. And, there is a revenue source for the state that I think is incredibly valuable, because not only will they be, contracting for some services that they don't perform on their own, but they'll be paying income tax to the state of Vermont. And, all of those things add to the general tax base that is really significant. And, we feel that, providing this kind of almost punitive additional charge for folks that are purchasing a higher level property just is not the message that the state should be sending. We are a tourism-based economy. And like I said, I mean, those second homeowners are really like ultra tourists because they're spending a tremendous amount of time and revenue in our state. The other side of this, and I guess, when we get to the other portions of the bill, I'd like to comment as well. The manufacturing inputs tax credit, that needs revenue, and we'll speak to this momentarily, I'm sure, roughly $800,000. That is not a significant amount and can be easily absorbed into the revenues of the state. And Senator Sorokin has placed the trailer tax credit portion of this bill in S226, the omnibus housing bill, where I think it is appropriate for that to be funded, and he has funding for that through ARPA funds in S226 at this point. So the need is not there. The revenue production is not great, and the impression on folks making a decision to invest in Vermont or another state doesn't need to be there. So as a result, we would oppose this bill, and hope that the committee will see that there are other ways, like the omnibus housing bill, to create the kinds of incentives for manufactured home credits or the manufacturing input credit that are the positive portions of this bill.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, committee? Right. Thank you. Okay, Abby, why don't you just let us know, we have a section by section here. So let us know, walk us through the next section on sales and use tax exemption for manufacturing machinery, and then we'll take Will Baker. Okay.
Great. Yes, so Section 4 of the bill expands an existing sales and use tax exemption for manufacturing machinery and equipment, and it moves to exempt the equipment that is part of an integrated production process under current statute to be eligible for the manufacturing equipment, machinery and equipment exemption. The machinery and equipment must be directly and exclusively used in the manufacture of tangible personal property for sale. This expands that exemption. So I would like to kick it over to Will, because this was a proposal from the tax department, and I think he'll probably be able to give you context into where their proposal originated. And there is, I would also just point out that there is quite extensive language in here that's being added to the exemption, and that's primarily definitions, defining what integrated production operation means, defining manufacturing or processing businesses. And much of this language was taken from other states. I believe Georgia was one of the primary states that this was modeled on. That said, having done some research into what other states do, it's kind of across the board. There's a lot of variation. There isn't really any one coherent approach across other states to how they exempt machinery and equipment used in manufacturing.
Okay, and this is the sales and use tax, right? They would be.
Yes, this is sales and use tax. That's right. So it is important to note that the property transfer tax surcharge that was just discussed would go into the general fund. So that would impact the general fund, whereas this is sales and use tax, so it would impact the education fund.
Right. Okay, so Mr. Baker, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Abby. That was a good introduction to this topic. I forwarded to the committee clerk a one-page flow chart looking document. Does the committee have that document?
I am not, let me see if it's posted. Or Ruth, can you see if it's posted?
Yes,
If I
it
get
is.
off, I can't.
Ooh, Will, this is really nice. Yes, it's posted.
Oh, it's posted? All right.
It's a flow chart.
Here's the flow chart.
Color, look at this.
Look at that. All right, I'm gonna try and get that up on my phone. Because if I get out the other way, I lose contact with committee staff.
I would print it for you, but I can't print it
No,
on
you
my
can't, no,
computer.
I'm fine.
I'm sorry.
Get it up, okay. So
Okay, thank you. I'm really looking forward to presenting this chart here. If you'd like me to share my screen, I can do that. But if you all have it in front of
that
you,
might be helpful.
okay. It is only one page, so it
That
it's
would
not.
be- For me, that would be helpful, so.
Okay. Before I do that, just to give you a little bit of context, this is as Ms. Shepherd mentioned, this is about sales tax. As you know, sales of tangible property are subject to sales tax. However, there are many exemptions. In fact, there are about 56 of them. Today, we're just talking about one of them. This is the exemption for machinery and equipment used in manufacturing. So this is about sales tax, not that you might pay when you buy a product, but that a manufacturer pays. Sales tax or use tax, a manufacturer pays. There are other exemptions that apply to manufacturers having to do with packaging.
Okay, all right, we have a question, yes.
If I buy the same machinery that we're talking about, do I pay this tax?
If you buy machinery, it depends on what you're going to do with it. If you're a manufacturer, then you might be exempt under this section.
So a manufacturer who buys the machinery would also pay the same sales tax I would pay?
Do you mean, Senator McDonald, the ultimate final product, buying the ultimate final product? Because what we're talking about here is the actual manufacturing equipment.
Forgive me, I'm being too circumspect. We used to tax this equipment every year as a property tax, did we not?
The state did.
Yeah, you mean as far as a business property tax, like personal property tax?
The machinery, the equipment, and all that stuff was taxed on an annual basis. Up until, what, 1997, 98, 99, is that correct?
I don't know the history behind that.
And that annual tax on machinery and equipment was eliminated as an annual tax, and now it's only paid once. Is that correct? When you buy it?
As far as sales tax goes, this proposal is about sales tax, not the property tax, and it is
But
one
you only
time.
pay once, right?
That's right.
And now you want to eliminate all taxes on that sort of thing.
No, this proposal is actually just on a couple items in the manufacturing process that I can get into. There are three changes in this proposal. It's a lot of text in the bill document, but it really boils down to three central types of things.
Right, well, maybe to clarify things. Machinery used in the production, and I believe our code says the direct production of a product that is then offered for sale. When I bought my knitting machine, I didn't pay sales tax because I was knitting and selling the product. I didn't pay sales tax when I bought the raw materials. I had a tax number. I included those costs into the final cost of the product, and that's what was taxed, was the end product. We presently don't, and these are pretty specialized equipment. It's not something, you know, the average person would not buy a lot of this equipment. It's manufacturing equipment, and we don't now tax sales tax the equipment that is directly involved, if I'm remembering it. So this would be, what you're proposing is in addition to that?
Well, what we're proposing here is a simplification to this manufacturing exemption.
But are you picking up new products that would be exempt?
No. Oh, picking up new products that would be exempt, yes.
Yes, okay. I'm remembering the testimony from last year or the year before, that this is equipment. The one I remember is the big vent fan that sucks up the white dust at the granite factory. It doesn't actually saw or carve the granite, but it's there, it's running constantly, and without it, OSHA would shut you down. So and I think we had a couple bottle, I know we had machines that put the packaging at one point came up, and I think we extended to cover packaging of some kind, something about the Keurig pop top things, the number of years ago. So we don't tax manufacturer equipment when the manufacturer buys it that is directly involved in producing a product. And this bill asks to broaden that. Is that what's going on?
That is what's going on. That's exactly right. The proposal is to slightly broaden the manufacturing exemption.
Is that a way of saying no longer tax?
Yes.
There's an exemption right now that exempts most manufacturing machinery. But the tricky part is defining the contours of that exemption. You know, if you draw a circle around what's exempt, when we get into an audit situation with a taxpayer, of course, the dispute is always about whether you're inside the exemption or outside the exemption. And that's really what this proposal is about. I do want to mention that this proposal came from the tax department staff, including me, This is not a proposal from the administration, although the administration does support it, of course. We developed this proposal at the department because our auditors have a great deal of trouble interpreting one test of taxability that I'll get to in a minute. It's very subjective. We receive appeals of audit findings on this quite regularly. And so that means we have a dispute with the taxpayer. And if we can't resolve the dispute, the taxpayer can appeal the audit findings to court. And the tax department has lost twice in court on this issue, one in 2011 and once in 2020. So in 2021, we made this proposal and it's passed the House. Evidently, reasonable people can disagree on this exemption test language, and that's not a good place to be as a tax department. If reasonable people can disagree, then you're in a real gray area, and ultimately you have a Vermont Superior Court judge looking at it and making the decision, and that's the place that we found ourselves twice on the losing end. So let me share the chart here. Okay, can everyone see the chart?
You can make it a little bigger. Enlarge it.
How's that?
Yep, that's good.
Okay. So look, I think folks will be able to understand this well. At least I certainly did when you look at it visually and you look at the manufacturing process visually. So what we did here is we took a real life Vermont manufacturing example. The example here is a dried milk product. I kind of picture in my mind powdered milk. I'm not sure if that's exactly how the manufacturer would describe it, but I put it across the top here. Starting on the top left, you've got the cow. That's my symbol of raw materials here. And then you've got the shipping. You've got the raw materials being obtained and transported to the facility. You've got the raw materials being stored on site before manufacturing, and that's that tank here. And then after that, and I've written this in blue, as you can see, you have a series of operations, which is the manufacturing process. And legally speaking, this is very important for this test and the application of the law to all these types of equipment. And this is done across the country. All states that have a sales tax have a manufacturing exemption, and they all have a manufacturing process, the beginning and end. The beginning is when the raw materials are initially manipulated and acted upon by the machinery. And so in this case, you would have piping where the milk is taken through filters and heaters, dryers, mixers, sifters, moving the material through the facility and transforming that milk into a new product. And then that product is dumped into initial packaging. And initial packaging is also what lawyers call a term of art. It's a very specific defined term. And that's the end of the manufacturing process, when the material is placed into initial packaging. During that manufacturing process, the writing in blue, everything that acts on the product is exempt under current law. Before the manufacturing process, farther to the left, when you've got the raw milk being transported to the facility, all machinery is taxable under current law. During the manufacturing process, machinery that acts on the material directly is exempt. And then, of course, after you have any manufacturer knows that even after you've made the product, you have several steps, including secondary packaging. That's when the small box of your product is placed into a box of boxes of your product. and it's often palletized. It's many boxes are placed on a pallet, and it's moved around the facility, like perhaps on a forklift, and then finally you have the finished products being shipped. Everything under current law, everything after the product is placed into initial packaging is taxable. The tricky test that I've just recently mentioned, and that we've gone to court to address, is that language in brown, which is everything that the manufacturer uses that doesn't directly act upon the product. It could be exempt. It might be exempt if it's integrated into a synchronized product process and protects the quality of the product. So we're talking about waste removal on site, as Senator Cummings mentioned, the removal of the granite dust or sawdust, cleaning of all these various pieces of equipment and tanks and things like that, testing, inspection and quality assurance, any of those sort of products. They might be exempt if they're integrated into the synchronized process and protect the quality of the product. So it's got to be integrated into a synchronized process. That language, that's the key right there, and that has been very difficult to determine. The taxpayer has to do an analysis and figure out if any particular piece of product, that any piece of machinery that they're purchasing is going to be integrated into a synchronized process. If you brew a batch of beer in a huge stainless steel tank, and then the beer flows out of the tank, and then you clean the tank, and then you brew the next batch of beer, is that computerized automated cleaning equipment integrated into the synchronized process? Or have you brewed your batch of beer and then finished brewing it, then cleaned the tank, and then started your next batch? And that brewing example is exactly the case that went to court in 2020 when the tax department lost. And that cleaning equipment was determined to be integrated into a synchronized process because it was computerized and it was purchased. The cleaning equipment was purchased when all the other equipment was purchased. But you can see the rabbit holes that the judges, taxpayers, and the tax auditors have to go down to make that determination. So next, moving just down this document to the next level is this proposal that's in this bill. You can see that it's not really all that different. When you're before the manufacturing process, when you're bringing all the raw materials on site, it's still all taxable. During the manufacturing process, of course, the direct manufacturing equipment is exempt, but we've removed that tricky test so that if it's waste removal, if it's cleaning, testing, those sorts of things, if it's in the manufacturing process, it's exempt. And then after, all the machinery and equipment for anything that happens after the manufacturing process would be taxable, except for two items. And that's any packaging, any machinery used for packaging, and any machinery used for inspection. And I can give you the reasons for these, for this element of the proposal. We have cases where I'll give you a very specific example. A Vermont manufacturer of meat products, shelf-stable meat products, manufactures their product, and as part of that manufacturing process, which is very common in food manufacturing, they have an X-ray machine. It's actually an X-ray machine that looks into the product to see if there's any foreign objects, any pieces of plastic or metal that had somehow gotten into the finished product. Because it's an X-ray machine, they do that element of quality assurance. They can do it both at the very end when everything is in boxes, and they can do it during the manufacturing process. And this particular manufacturer had an X-ray equipment that was on wheels. And so sometimes, looking back at the flow chart, sometimes they used it on the very right side of the document where the product is in boxes, and sometimes they wheeled it into the actual manufacturing process and did quality assurance at that point, depending on what product they were making that day. That moving of the piece of equipment had very important tax consequences that they weren't aware of. And it's very difficult for the taxpayer and for a tax auditor to figure out whether that piece of equipment is used in the manufacturing process or not. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And so for that reason, the proposal here is to exempt all quality assurance machinery, even if it's used after the point of initial packaging. Similarly,
Madam Chair, just
Yes.
at this point, just a proposal to exempt it from one end to the other would simplify things, solve the problem, take it out of the courts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is that what you're saying?
that is what we're saying. It's not all exempt. The only time that it's all exempt is during the manufacturing process, which is that box in the middle, the blue with the blue writing.
Would it also be accurate to quit fiddling around with trying to prorate, having to go to court and having the courts do this, and that, the other thing, and simply to tax it all from start to finish? Would that solve the problem of complicatedness?
I suppose that would solve the problem of complicatedness, but it would be a more expensive proposition.
From your careful explanation, and many of these items seem to be performing tasks that people used to perform, and these machines are performing them instead of the people that used to clean stuff out and swab it and wash it. And is that fair to say?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you repeat it?
Are these machines replacing what people used to do? Employees.
Not an X-ray machine.
Yeah, I suppose in certain cases, yeah.
But that would get, I mean, people weren't doing X-ray unless Superman was one of the
No,
employees.
They weren't.
Or the vacuum suctioning, or my father did spend some time cleaning commercial vats in Maine when they were shut down. So yeah, I would assume that
But
people
I don't
did that.
offer an opinion at this point. I believe that buying all this stuff saves them money and they don't have to hire as many people. Is that correct?
I couldn't speak to that. I imagine they buy a lot of these things because they're required to, and certainly to protect the quality of the final product.
They're more efficient than people, make fewer mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know about that. It's all kinds of machinery, whether it's something a person could do or not.
I mean, this is generalized. I think you're getting into a specific business by business.
So, yeah.
What do you want to know?
Just, Madam Chair, we've been doing this for a little while. And whenever something is complicated, the owners, when they get in these situations, they do the wise thing. They come in and say, instead of simplifying it by having us tax everything and stop this complicated prorating that sometimes goes into court, wins or loses, we should just not tax any of it. That's what they said. And each time, I mean, they came in once and said prorated. Then they came in and asked for a different definition to be moved from one side of the ledger to the other. And it keeps getting eroded. And we used to tax all the equipment, and we used to have a property tax on it every year to pay for our education system. And we keep being asked to make changes that do two things. One is collect less revenue, and two, hire fewer people. And now I'm gonna change a second. At the same time, we've got a property tax system that is constantly changing, where we have people who pay property taxes and school taxes based on their income, and that's changing. And the money that goes to that funding is going down, and the funding we used to get from this equipment is also going down. And the winners are the people with this equipment, and the losers are the people who pay their school taxes based on income. Because we have these requests coming into us, and we keep saying yes to both sides, and the balance becomes unbalanced. And that's, people's eyes are glazing over. It's late in the afternoon.
Well,
But every time we discuss this, it gets narrowed down to what's on the chart, never to what's happening to the system that we have. And then when we go to fix the other end of the system, well, we can't do that this year. We have to wait. This isn't the time to do it. But often when Mr. Baker and others come in, we're persuaded that it has to be done now. And
okay,
it happens over and over. And
It
thank you, Madam
does.
Chair, you've indulged me, but this is
Thank
part of a bigger.
it is part of a bigger picture. And you've also touched on the fact that we have gone from human hands-on manufacturing to machine manufacturing.
Because they make more money that way.
And yeah, or they can charge less for their products so more people can spend it, and we can argue that one too.
Don't argue, you're right.
All right,
Right.
okay. And a lot of them are moving overseas, which is the other issue that's going on, and I think we've probably lost more jobs that way. And I believe that the
That's a-
property
that's a
tax
question
was
worth
not
asking.
a state property tax. That property tax went out before it was a local property tax. There were stories about trains and large equipment that suddenly were in New Hampshire because it had to be in Vermont on March 31st, I think, for
That's right.
property tax, and that wasn't a state tax. So we've got this one. I remember the testimony from last time that said the way you pick this up is audits. That the concern was it was confusing, and when you've gone to court, you've lost. I'm assuming there's an expense going to court. There is a interest that has to be paid. So you're proposing that we make this simpler to understand. And I'm going to, I don't know, I think you can take down the screen. I'm going to see if Graham or anybody is with us and has a, yes, Graham, do you have a fiscal statement on this one?
I do. For the record, Graham Campbell from the Joint Fiscal Office. So I have the fiscal note for the entire bill, but for this specific provision that Mr. Baker's speaking of, we estimate that it'll reduce sales tax revenues by about $900,000. This year and upcoming years, and because the sales tax goes into the education fund, it would reduce education fund revenues and, keeping everything else constant, we would need to adjust the yields to account for this change.
So saying that, is it because most manufacturers have been paying this tax?
Yes. The estimate for this one was somewhat difficult. The basis for a lot of it comes from the audits the tax department does of manufacturers, and over the past few years, I believe, I'm trying to remember when this estimate was done. Last year, that they have brought in historically anywhere between like $300,000 and $750,000 in audits every year. And then, so that's money we're currently receiving in audits that we collect that we will no longer be receiving. And then an additional amount is sort of our assumption for manufacturers who will sort of, recognize the differences in the exemption language and avail themselves of the new exemption.
Okay. But that's only if they buy new equipment.
That's correct. Yes.
Senator, I'm recognizing Senator Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Graham, did you just say how much the audit costs were? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Sorry, maybe I wasn't clear. So it's our understanding that the majority of the revenue that we collect in this world on manufacturing sales taxes is through the audit process. So when you are a manufacturer and you buy a very large piece of equipment, typically it's the responsibility, unlike regular sales taxes where the individual pays the 6% and the business remits it. For a manufacturer, when they buy these large bits of equipment, the company that they're buying from aren't necessarily collecting the sales tax, and so oftentimes it's the responsibility of the buyer of the equipment to remit use tax instead. And so over the past couple of years, in the course of audits, it's my understanding that the tax department has discovered some businesses that have underpaid the use tax on the manufacturing equipment that they have bought, and that amount from those audits has ranged in the couple $100,000 range. And so in some years, I think I remember it was like 300,000. Other years it was up to 750,000. And so we're assuming that revenue would go away because of this, and then an additional revenue for some manufacturers who are currently paying the use tax correctly, or there might be some rare big businesses who are selling this equipment who are collecting the sales tax that would no longer be collecting it.
Okay. And do you know the answer to the question about when or if, how we, Chris is back, exempted these machines from property tax? Do you know?
I don't know the history of the property tax on this type of property. No, I don't.
But do you know, can you confirm that they're not subject to property tax now? Is that correct? Do you know?
I don't know.
Not for education.
Yeah,
not for education, but for.
They used to be subject as a local property tax.
Oh, for municipal property
Yeah.
tax, but not for education property tax?
And I don't know what they do.
That's weird.
You have to pay personal property tax on your fax machine in your office, things like that, but nobody pays it.
Well, yeah.
If you're using it
Well,
for
very
business
people really
purpose.
lowball the value of it.
If you're using it for a business purpose, not if you're using it for
Right.
a personal purpose.
Yes, I think it's business property tax, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And that's.
I don't know if that's local.
Okay.
So, I asked for fiscal note?
You just got one.
No, I got a fiscal note for what happens if you exempt it all. What happens if you tax it all and you eliminate the courts and the appeals and the audits and the self-reporting if you simply tax the items that are being purchased and don't try and cut the baby in half.
So Senator, are you asking if we got rid of the manufacturer inputs exemption entirely and taxed everything?
Yeah.
What I can get that in one moment. It's in the tax expenditure report.
Okay. Okay. Okay, we're running out of time, so we are not going. Some of us have another meeting at 5. And we've got lawyers that have to leave, so we are going to finish this one up. And then we will assume that we're gonna have to stay here tomorrow night very late, or we're not gonna get these bills out. Graham, when you talk about the tax revenues that we've gotten, those are not annual payments. They only come in one time when the manufacturer buys the equipment. So is it fair to say that if our tax policy gets too extreme or too difficult, manufacturers might buy less equipment or move to China? Because if we don't have them, they don't buy equipment. And I can ask Will what other states do.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe all states that have a sales tax have a manufacturing exemption. As Abby mentioned in the very beginning of the discussion, they do vary in terms of how large that exemption is. Some states exempt all of it, and some states exempt direct and exclusive, which is what Vermont does. So I'm not aware of any state that taxes all of its manufacturing equipment. And if I could just add, when we're thinking about this, the fiscal note and the revenue estimate, I would just add that as Graham mentioned, most of this revenue is discovered through the audit process, and that also is not where you want to be as far as tax administration. We have to rely on voluntary compliance, and so if we see a great deal of non-compliance, that tells a tax administrator that you either have a complexity problem or an education and outreach problem. And the department would offer in this case that we have a complexity problem. And so if we simplify the rules, then that will allow manufacturers to self-report and self-pay the use tax that they owe. And then our auditors can go and focus on other areas in the tax code and recover tax that way. So I would just, there's lost opportunity cost here when we pursue a very costly and long drawn out audit and appeal. So I think we should keep that in mind when we're thinking about this revenue estimate.
Okay, committee. Senator, unless you have something new.
The witnesses said that it would eliminate a lot of the costly costs associated with self-reporting, et cetera, so would taxing it all would eliminate those.
Yes, Senator, you've made that point. Would you like to make a motion to amend this bill? Because if you don't, you've made the point, it's asked and answered.
Well, Madam Chair, I've asked several times if we're gonna deal with where the money goes and solve the inequity on the other side where
Senator,
working families are losing money, they have to pay more to operate schools. At the same time, we don't have time to fix this.
okay,
When these folks come in, they get a hearing, it's the end of the day,
okay,
and we're
then
supposed to hurry up because it's late.
Senator, I'm reaching the point of adjourning this meeting. You have made the same point at least 5 times. I have now put off 3 other bills, so plan to be here until 10 o'clock tomorrow night. We need to decide up or down on this. And that we cannot deal with what else is happening in the property tax whole setup in the schools. we may end up going all to income on that. We have a limited bill and we need to make a decision. I really don't care if it comes out or not. Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm recalling why we didn't move this bill
Yes.
because it's murky.
Maybe I can find out, Senator Sorokin, is the mobile home credit in your housing bill?
It is. the exact same
Okay, so
one.
we don't need to do that, so we don't.
I just wanted to ask my question. This is an H bill from last year, so I don't believe, I think we could do this Tuesday when we're a little less pinched for crossover, unless I'm mistaken. I wanted to just check in with you about that.
I think this was an H bill. It wasn't the same as S53, which we voted out and then sent to them. It was an H bill that came to us last year. We can try it.
I'll go check with you.
It's a different.
Do you want me to? I can check with the secretary if that helps. Well,
Senator
I'll just say.
Volunteered, and I think he might need to
Got it.
take a walk upstairs.
Understood.
Okay, so the manufacturing is not on this one. I think we're gonna put this one aside, but I also think we have lost our, let's see. Hard stops, so I am not sure where we can go next. Yeah, okay, maybe Senator Pearson, you can just brief the committee on the cannabis license.
Yeah.
We are going to have some amendments on the floor tomorrow, and that we do need to do.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that chance. So committee, I referenced this a little bit quickly on the floor. Faith should have posted this on our website by now. So I don't know if you can pull it up, but it's an amendment to H701. I barely understand it. I guess we don't have Anthea with us, but
She's coming.
I'm getting there.
So, all right, good. Now I can do it without worrying if I'm totally right. In the budget adjustment, there's a date problem where March 1st, I'm just going to stop here. Anthea and Bryn, oh my God, the all-star cast is here, Madam Chair, and you don't need to hear anything from me. Anthea, I probably would be appropriate to start with you, and I haven't even started. So if you could just explain why we need this, I'd be grateful.
Okay, sure thing. So for the record, Anthea Dexter Cooper from the Office of Legislative Counsel. So if you think back to before your break, there was language that the Senate added to the Budget Adjustment Act as sections 59A and 59B that delayed something that was in Act 164 from a past biennium from March 1 to July 1 of 2022. And it was basically taking, and this Bryn can speak to more, taking language in Title 18 and moving it over from DPS over to Title 7 and putting it under the Cannabis Control Board. March 1 has come and gone, and while sections 59A and 59B stayed in the Budget Adjustment Act through the Committee of Conference report, it hasn't been enacted yet. So now there's this like weird potential limbo state where the rules that existed regulating the dispensaries don't really exist anymore because that authority, that statutory authority, has been repealed. So what the amendment does is it does three things. In section 10, it has like a lot of language to say very simply, if the Budget Adjustment Act becomes law, sections 59A and 59B in the Budget Adjustment Act are repealed. And it's just way more difficult than a normal repeal because it's not like we're repealing something that's been enacted, because you don't really know yet what's going to happen with the Budget Adjustment Act. So it doesn't even have an act number. It's a weird description, and then it's got its H679 designation. So it's repealing that. And the reason why it makes sense to do that is because you don't want to be in this weird place where there's ambiguity around the legislative intent as to whether or not the rules are still supposed to be under DPS or the Cannabis Control Board. Then in section 11, it deems that any emergency rules that are filed that are identical to rules 3 and 4 of the Cannabis Control Board that were filed in permanent form with LCAR yesterday, if they're filed as emergency rules, they're deemed to meet the statutory requirements for an emergency rule. And in the APA, emergency rules can only be adopted if there's an imminent peril to public health, safety, or welfare. And sort of it's arguable as to whether or not that standard is met with this unregulated industry right now. But this is the General Assembly saying, we are deeming that requirement to have been met. So the Cannabis Control Board would be able to, they could do it now if they wanted to, but if they do file emergency rules that are identical to rules in 3 and 4, then they have met that standard for emergency rulemaking. LCAR could still theoretically object to them under any of the other objection grounds. And you have a very, very well-versed individual on your committee with the APA and rulemaking. So it wouldn't take anything else away from LCAR and the ability to object. But one of the key differences between emergency rules and permanent rules is emergency rules become effective as soon as they're adopted. So if the CCB were to file them tomorrow, they become effective tomorrow. They only can last for 180 days. Given the best possible world of timing, the 2 rules that were filed yesterday will be heard by LCAR on March 31st. And then even if the CCB adopted them that very day, because they're permanent rules, they wouldn't take effect for 15 days. So you're looking at April 15th as to when the permanent rules could be in place. And this kind of gives them the ability to meet a statutory requirement if challenged by LCAR on the emergency rule piece. And then the final thing it does is it just has everything be effective on passage, because now you don't need to have that delayed effective date for the fees for the dispensaries on July 1, because you want everything to be effective on passage because March 1 has come and gone. So really big picture. You wanted to stop something from happening by March 1 and delay it until July 1. That ship has sailed and sunk. You can't do it. Alternative plan, have them have their emergency rules in place so that you don't have an unregulated industry until the permanent rules can be in place. Clear?
Wow.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
and the amendment does that.
The amendment does that. Many attorneys and the House clerk have
Explain
looked at
that.
You're gonna have to give Senator Pearson a script, Thea.
Yeah, could I have you in my ear on the floor? My God. All right. So
I'll do it in bullets.
No one else will understand enough to ask questions.
yeah.
I understand that. I'm gonna ask questions.
That would be a significant breach of protocol, Senator Sorokin, since we're in committee.
Senator Brock does it to me all the time.
Well, let's not look to him as a model, okay? So, Anthea, at the base of this, we're trying to make sure that the medical program moves to the Cannabis Control Board, and it's a timing issue.
Yeah.
And then it's deadlines, and we already made this move, and now we want to slow it down, but those deadlines have moved. Is that part of this?
Yeah, that's part of it. And because the BAA hasn't been enacted yet, it's already moved. It just doesn't have rules.
But the BAA, by the time this bill goes back to the House, the BAA is likely to be the law. And will this then get stripped out in the House?
So it could get stripped out in the House, or Section 10 covers your bases. And that's the very complicated, we're going to repeal it if it becomes an act and it's just part of a bill right now. So you wouldn't need to change anything. It's taking 59A and 59B out of the BAA. And it is arguable that because the BAA has already not been enacted by that March 1 deadline, the language has been repealed, it's been moved over to Title VII. Even if sections 59A and 59B of the BAA become law now, I'm going to use another transportation metaphor. The train has left the station and you can't repeal a repealer after it's been repealed. You can't like resurrect the language. And I talked to Jen about that. So you got the top person weighing in on that statutory piece.
So committee, does that make sense?
Yeah, let's do this.
I'm glad that Anthea, it actually should probably have my name first, although it's tempting to hand this to Sears. He did ask for me to be the reporter, so
I'll swap them and send it to you.
yeah, let's. So I don't know, Madam Chair, if you want to hear from Bryn, but that's what we're trying to do, and you've heard our experts explain why.
I just want the committee, you know, you'd be able to stand up and say the committee approves of this. Because we got a little more leeway than we did this morning with the pension bill, which was literally 10 minutes before we went on the floor. Okay, I'm working on I'm rescheduling everything.
So
This, I think, yeah, I mean,
could we get a vote of
yeah, can we get a vote to approve this or not? I need a motion.
well, it's my amendment, so somebody else can make a motion.
All right, I'll move it. All right, sure. Senator Hardy has moved that we approve the rules. The amendments, are we, yeah, I don't think this is a formal vote. It's not a bill. This is the committee opinion, all right? So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
I don't know what the issue is.
This is an amendment that Senator Pearson will be making on the floor tomorrow.
Okay.
And I just want to be able to say that this committee, since we can't do committee amendments anymore, has heard testimony, and you know, and I want him to be able to say it is fine. And right now I've got 5, 6.
I'm fine, Madam Chair.
Okay.
The committee, they were started with Jeff. I'm sure you know.
Okay.
So, that's working.
Okay.
Okay.
5, 6, and 1 absent. Senator Gray is down the hall. So with that, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anthea.
You're welcome. I'll email you
Just
the
a few
amendment.
bullets. I don't need much.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Short and sweet.
Less is more. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Bryn.
One last thing that I was trying to get in this week. I think S-181, I've just told Faith, we've started scheduling S-bills that have, you know, been referred to us, trying to get a jump start. But the H-437, I keep being asked about, and that's done. And 181 will push to next week, but 255, which is Senator Pearson's bill on consumer fees for communications equipment. That we would have to do tomorrow if we're gonna do it. Senator Pearson, you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I appreciate you even giving this a few minutes. Since I remembered that we had this deadline and this bill, and you know, when we walked through it, the committee seemed generally interested, but it is, I guess I'm a little concerned. So Senator Sorokin, as I understand it, you have a consumer protection bill, H-74 that came over, and Maria tells me
I'm looking at that I'm looking that up right now.
it could be. So I guess I think, Madam Chair, to do it justice, it would be smarter to see if we could add it to something. And I think there is something. Maria tells me that this could be recrafted to fit in Title IX, which is what that bill, which is what H-74 comes from. It's a Marcotte bill, which something tells me that might be appealing to you, Senator Sorokin. But unless you know for sure you're not moving that, I think given the time of day and year, we would be better off with that approach, unless everybody, because I'm not sure the language as filed on this is ready to really move. So
Yeah, I think that's why I didn't bring it up, because it got kind of murky and bundled services and how do you determine what's a reasonable rate? Okay. So we will just not have to do that. And I think that is about the last bill that we have to do. What did we get out today? We got 437, we don't. Let's see.
I voted without you.
We voted without you to accept the cannabis amendments.
We can go in there.
Don't ask anyone to
Okay.
explain.
269 is out, 181, I think we and that was done, I think. This
Senator Cummings, would you like to go off live?
Do it.
I think so. You want to go off live? You wanna go
Senator Cummings, would you like to go off live?
Yes, can we go off live?